Okay guys, welcome back to the channel. Just back from Miami and Fort Lauderdale. If you were following me on Instagram, you'll see some of the coverage I did, just some of the fun stuff. But on top of the fun stuff was mainly for business in terms of, well, audiophile business. I wanted to listen to the Metaxas Prinz speaker, P-R-I-N-Z, that I featured at Expona. It's a speaker that intrigued me because it's a full-range line source and form factor, so small, narrow, could fit in my room. And those speakers have always, electrostatics have always intrigued me if they could deliver near full-range performance, like the big Sound Labs, big surface area, even the big Martin Logan Prodigies were big enough with the bass drivers to give you that full range. Every speaker is going to have trade-offs, but I always appreciated the trade-offs that you had to go through if you could get close to full range with those electrostatics and line sources. But I saw the Prinz at Expona, which was a narrow form factor, and Costas, the designer, told me he solved the problems of needing the big panels. Now, some of it's marketing, but I mean, I understand that going in. You can't beat the laws of physics. But if he could get it in the ballpark of where I'm used to anyway, rolling off these to unload them onto subs, then I could get even less of a trade-off of having those type of speakers and what I like and what I enjoy with these. But now I could get a full range line source, one driver doing everything, which in my opinion would be the only thing that maybe I would enjoy better. You know, these have really served me well. I can have pretty much what I want, to be honest with you. But these speakers, every speaker has trade-offs. But these have very little trade-offs when you factor in, I'm using ORC, optimal room correction. I'm doing my active crossover to my subs, and now I have my do-it-yourself sub. I can do things with room treatments here. I'm getting a level of performance that I'm not hearing from anything else, or when I sniff the potential of other speakers, it's very few that I think would give me a meaningful improvement. But if I could get a total line source, electrostatic, all-one driver with no crossover parts at all, except for when I go to my subs, that could be an attractive element. So just giving you some background of why I saw that speaker, and really what I want to do with this preface, you can jump ahead if you want. I have footage from the Distributor's condo where I visited, met Jeff again, and one of the dealers down there, Oz. Not Oz from High End by Oz, but Oswald. Great guy. Great meeting him. And I have a music clip. So if you just want to jump ahead, go ahead. But I know my niche is not really for drive-by audiophiles, and sometimes macro takeaways are more important than actual footage and music clips for many of you. So what I want to do in this preface is, number one, tell you why, like I did, go out there and analyze the speaker. Because if you're spending this kind of money, you might as well book extra money to spend the time to directly demo it. This just should be a part of the cost nowadays if you don't have a local dealer. But also what I was looking for with this speaker. Why did it intrigue me, like I was talking about? But what was I looking at for when I went to the demo? I want to walk you through that process, what I heard, give you the pluses and minuses, and walk you through that process in more detail, because what I see in this hobby is unfortunately a painful learning curve, one that I had to go through, of churning through gear nonstop and never really, always having to upgrade, and never really getting to that happy point where you can settle on a speaker for a long time. And the reason being is that a lot of people in this hobby don't take the time to understand, or hasn't been explained to them, how to correlate what they hear with the design of the speaker, and then say, okay, this speaker has these attributes I like, and this is the design element that I like, and these are the trade-offs I can live with. And then you make smarter decisions that are keeping you in that upward trajectory when you start to understand. And also understand and train your ears, which I'll have a video on that in the upcoming months, of measurements to your ears. People like to fight like measurements are separate from what your ears hear. No. These established measurements and high fidelity metrics are because of what your ears hear, except for extreme cases where people like ridiculous amounts of bass, or they don't care about flat response, they don't care about accuracy. Yeah, there's always going to be that outlier person. But for the most part, these measurement high fidelity metrics are because they equal what we hear and what we want in terms of accuracy, and that these mastering engineers are not that crazy. If you get something in your room accurate, it ends up sounding better most of the time, and the two go hand in hand. So correlating when you have a speaker, what is the speaker doing versus your room, understanding that, understanding the measurements, the design elements, this will give you a better indication of what will you focus your trajectory on in buying new stuff. And that way you're not constantly on a merry-go-round of churning gear every few months. And it brings up another point. I was just at 3MA recently, and there's a guy that's always there that asks me my opinion on stuff. And it's very common on Facebook. You'll see people, hey, what's the best speaker for me? Under 5,000, 10,000. And you'll get knee-jerk, just one word or one brand name and model number replies. And that's a very primitive way to give people advice. And God forbid if a dealer or somebody charging you is just giving you brand names right off the bat. If you are truly giving advice, certainly for social media, anonymous, random, you can expect one brand replies, very primitive replies. But really a dealer and anybody that asks me or, God forbid, pay for advice, the first questions out of their mouth should be understanding what is it you like based on what you've heard before. What is your experience level, number one, of what you've heard? And then what have you liked with what you've heard so far? Because once you understand that, I'm not an expert on what you like. I'm an expert on what I like. And you may like what I like, and a lot of people do, but at the end of the day, some people have some very wild tastes. And if I understand what your tastes are, I can point you in the direction, because I do have more experience than maybe your limited experience. I can share with you, hey, you may want this speaker, but if you haven't heard this that I like, you may like some attributes of this. But if the first questions out of anybody's mouth that's trying to give you advice should be understanding how much experience you have, what you've heard, and then also what have you liked about that. It's not just a primitive game of, oh, XYZ brand works with this brand and you're going to be fine. No, these cables are bright. These cables are warm. No, these are very primitive audiophile advice people. These are ones you want to avoid. What you want to avoid is, what you want to focus on is people that really get to understand what you like and also challenge you to maybe learn different types of things based on their experience and what I've had to go through the hard way. I can shortcut that for you. And that's why I'm spending this time in this intro. Again, you can jump ahead, explaining what I do when I want to find something new to potentially purchase. And in this case, the design element intrigued me. I knew there were trade-offs to electrostatics, like I outlined earlier. But even before I get to that level, I have to do due diligence on the people behind it. I'm not doing business with anybody who I don't agree with or don't like. That goes for whether it's their dealer, distributor, or especially owners. There's just no time for dealing with people I don't like. I like to support companies that I appreciate and respect the people behind it. And so what was great is all the due diligence I did on Metaxas and Costas came back really great feedback and pedigree in the industry. So all of that, and then I met them firsthand at Expona. So that's very important, and that's something a lot of people overlook. And certainly bespoke brands, getting that one-to-one relationship with the designer and owner, I value that a lot. In fact, I'm going to be having a Zoom interview. I don't want to spoil this too much, but Mark Levinson and I have been talking. I want to do a Zoom interview with him to learn a little bit more about his C-Wave stuff and the Daniel Hurt stuff. So that's an FYI coming. But this is something I want to do before I knee-jerk buy something or come to a conclusion about something. Once I get to know the people behind it more and can ask questions, then I'll know whether, okay, I have synonymous opinions with what they hear or vice versa. And in the case of Costas, we almost heard direct synonymously when we were talking about the Stax X9000 headphone. Everything I was saying about it, he said echoes what he heard when he heard that headphone, and he owns it himself. So we already even have ownership of similar equipment. And so it was enough to pass that test to go to that next level, invest the time to go to Miami, hear the speaker at the distributor's house, and evaluate what I knew was still going to be a restricted speaker for full range performance. So people that maybe thought I was crazy thinking that that speaker is going to replace these or my Wisdoms alone, don't worry. I knew going in that that was not part of the deal. Part of the deal was knowing that those kind of speakers are restricted in terms of dynamics, what that stator can before it slaps, and also low bass is just going to be restricted. But what I have, because I have not only these, in a family, I have the Bach ORC, I have two subs. One sub that's a do-it-yourself with, I can cross it over wherever. It's got an acoustic elegance driver that plays nearly flat, well past 1,000 hertz. I'll show you the measurements. Maybe I'll put them up here. It's really incredible. I mean, it'll have peaks and dips, but those peaks are very easy. In fact, they're welcome for DSP to bring down flat easy. And the dips in my room response at my listening position, those are almost so narrow, those dips and nulls, that they would be almost inaudible on most material, but those are fixable as well. So I have a driver with my do-it-yourself sub that can go pretty high, and I can cross it over wherever. Now, a pre-bought sub with a internal crossover like the REL 25 and most subs, it's hard to defeat their internal crossover. So they're going to roll off at 200 hertz. Maybe that's the max you can get them to play. So you have to have somewhat full range speakers to go up to the level of their internal crossover, which I think it's pretty high on the REL. But in any case, I went in knowing I'm going to be crossing these over and alleviating much of the bass from these Metaxas Prinz. I just wanted to know what the crossover point would be, because in my, again, walking through the nuances, my taste have shown that I don't mind having subs. In fact, I like subs offloading the demands. This speaker doesn't even like to play 20 and 30, 40 hertz if you can alleviate it. Much better. And it's also better for your amp too, to only have to drive these much higher. But the main problem people have with subs, they cross over too high, they don't meld them right, they still got big bass nodes and all kinds of problems, but also they play too high. The roll-off is too shallow. They play well over 100 hertz, which starts getting into locatable frequencies. The subs are low to the ground or in the corner, not time aligned, not phase aligned, and you now hear locatable frequencies from another driver totally separate from your mains. Very problematic, very bad. But once you get the skills to integrate a sub properly and the tools, Bach ORC and different things you can do, mini DSP, Dirac, all kinds of tools, then you realize, okay, I can get the best of both worlds. I can use a speaker like the Metaxas, electrostatic, no crossover parts, really great in that 500 hertz and up range, but limited in dynamics and certain capabilities under that range. Certainly under 200 hertz, it starts getting a little bit dicey how much it starts to roll off. Now, the specs on the Metaxas Prinz say 30 hertz or 35 or whatever it is. That's not the 3 dB point. Sometimes that's just marketing, guys. What was very impressive, let's get to the demo I actually did of the Prinz. What was interesting is that I could tell it was a lean speaker if I was going to run it full range. No, that's not the speaker for me, and it's not going to be a speaker for most people if you listen to dynamic material, really loud. I was playing stuff like Victor Wooten, bass, EDM. Those got strained, and you could make it slap with dynamic material. But if you have a condo, you don't like a lot of low bass, the leaner presentation may be okay, full range. It's not a speaker, personally, I would recommend full range, okay? But that's not why I went in there. I just wanted to see how low it could get, and if it did meet the point where I feel comfortable using my subs, under 100 hertz, then it may work for me. Well, here's the deal. I heard it very lean, but I wanted to confirm it with some measurements. So primitively, we played test tones, and I used an SPL meter on my phone. Certainly not a replacement for anechoic measurements. This is in-room, so you got the room playing a role, which plays a big role under 200 hertz. But it still gave me an impression over several frequencies what the average was compared to the mid-range and the treble, how far down it was, and when did it really start going down. And really, what was nice in one respect is I could start hearing stuff at 30 hertz. So not at 20 hertz. But 30 hertz, you pretty much started hearing a bass. And it stayed constant in terms of SPLs up to about 100 hertz and even more static, which is pretty impressive because you would expect much more peaks in or even at 30 hertz to be further down. So it maintained a level of bass, but when you compared it to mid-range frequencies and higher, it was still 10 to 15 dB down. And so the leanness that I heard was reflected in the measurements. Again, the two go hand in hand, guys. It's not once you learn, and I'll have a video to help you guys on that. Not a tangent, though, I'm going on right now. But in this case, I wanted to know, well, where is that roll-off point? And roughly using the primitive measurements I had at the time for this demo, it seems like it'll start doing that 3 dB roll-off, I want to say, maybe as high as 170 hertz or 200 hertz, but probably in that 150, 120, which is still higher than I would like to cross over my subs. Now, my Acoustic Elegance driver, as I showed at the measurements, I'll pop them up. It can play high, and it's also loaded off the ground above my Rel 25. So the problem why, let me explain this in more detail. Again, this is for the weeds, guys, the people that like to get into the weeds. Jump ahead if you don't like this. But for me, I'm loading bass higher up in the room because it's on top of my Rel sub. So when it does play locatable frequencies, it's not bringing the soundstage down. That's the problem that happens when you play subs too high and they're in locatable frequencies that are on the floor. Same thing with bass drivers in a cabinet that are on the floor. If those bass drivers on the floor are playing high up in the frequency range, it brings down the soundstage because they're locatable, and that's where it's coming from. And you can test this so easy. Again, if you have DSP, you have an active crossover, you have a speaker like my Wisdoms, I can just change how much my bass drivers at the bottom of the Wisdoms cross over, and it'll move the soundstage real time, up and down, 6 inches here or there, just by letting the bass driver below on the floor play higher up into locatable frequencies. So this is the type of stuff that you, as an advanced audiophile, this is the experience you get. It took me a long time to get to the point I'm at now, but I'm sharing this knowledge with you because it may bring up a lot of things that you're not considering when you're demoing speakers. You're just knee-jerk like I was doing for many years. Buying stuff, trying it. Oh, this is the best. Then I would try something else. Oh, that's now the best. But never taking the time to understand why something is the best and what was good about it, and going further and further along in your understanding, and then making those finer tuned decisions as you get further along in the hobby. I'm trying to shortcut that for you. And like I said, I can have a much better speaker in terms of price, but once you get something that meets the trade-offs you have, still at this point, this is going to be better for me. But potentially, I could use the Prinz with my do-it-yourself sub that will play higher and is loaded higher to the ground. I might be able to get some performance equality to what I have here or some advantages. Still to be determined, but the reason I'm bringing this up is it's still to come more because Costas is going to be in Munich with another model of Metaxas that has the same line source electrostatic here panels, but then wings on each side that are full range for strictly the bass. So there is a crossover element that will be added to hand off from that main panel to the two bass wings on the side of the Prinz that is the newest model, the state-of-the-art model. And in that case, I may like that enough, it brings the crossover point even further down that I can use almost similar crossover points I use here. So that might be something I consider as well. I want to explore this further. And then there's different price points. So it's a lot of things that go into this equation of what you decide to buy. But I thought it would be worthwhile to have this little detailed conversation for you guys that like to get in the weeds, like to understand, like to learn, at least from my perspective, what went into this whole process that I went through and extra work I went through. Okay, sorry guys, my phone went dead. I had to charge it real quick. I thought I could get away with doing this video in the time I had left with 5% battery, but nope, I talked too long. But hopefully you found this beneficial, and hopefully you'll find what's coming as I added to the end of this, the walkthrough I did of Jeff's distributorship, this cool condo, and the music clips of the Metaxas Prinz. So enjoy, guys. Alrighty, guys, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida with Jeff Garson, who I met at Exponent for the first time, and really one of my few exposures to Metaxas gear. And this speaker in particular, the Prinz, is it Prinz or Prinz?
Prinz.
Prinz, okay. Spelled with a Z. Really caught my attention because of, as I've mentioned in prior videos, we'll get a closer look real quick. It's an electrostatic speaker, very tall line source, unique in terms of different modules instead of one panel. And even these dimples are specifically designed to kind of negate some of the negatives people have had with the traditional curved electrostatic long one panel. And so it was very intriguing to me, but it was in an environment at Expona I could not demo it for sound quality. So I made the trip over here to listen to them. Even this on the back for resonance purposes is unique, not to mention great styling, as all Metaxas products are. You can see their tape deck and their turntable here. But while I was here, I wanted to let Jeff let you guys know about his place here. If you are interested, he's a distributor, but maybe I turn it over to you. What else you do with this place?
Thanks, Jason. So, yeah, Real Sound Distribution has the distribution rights for the Metaxas and Sins lines in North America, Canada, the US, and Mexico. But we are obviously able to host individuals who want to hear, who don't have a dealer in their area, would like to listen to or experience the Metaxas and Sins line. So we're down here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and we have, it's a residence, but it's also our offices, and it's also our showroom down here. It's modest, but certainly a great space for people to come and listen.
No, it's beautiful. We'll probably take a little trip down there at some point. But yeah, you wanted to introduce Oz as well.
Yeah, this is Oswaldo Martinez. Oz is from Let There Be Sound. He's an affiliate partner of us, the brand Metaxas and Sins, down here in South Florida, in the Western Florida area specifically. And Oz also has a showroom where he's able to demonstrate some of the Metaxas and Sins line. He's also an expert with analog, so anything turntable related or reel-to-reel related, Oz is a wonderful resource.
That's awesome, yeah.
And I'm honored to be in partnership with Real Sound.
Great, yeah. Well, great meeting you, yeah.
Same here.
And let's go ahead and take a look. This is a beautiful home/dealership, and you're right on the water too, right?
Right on the canal.
Well, the canal to get out to the
coastal here in South Florida. So from here we can take a boat and take a ride up out to the intercoastal and out to the Atlantic Ocean anytime.
Beautiful. Okay, guys. Well, I'll have more, some sound clips and all, and some reports, and also going to be seeing more of the Metaxas, the different lines in Munich. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, Jeff, for having me out here. Great meeting you, Oz.
Thanks, Jason.